Welcome back to the Lounge by Travefy. I'm Stephanie Grice, and I'm so excited to officially kick off our new sales workshop series. And not just that, but to relaunch the Lounge podcast as your go-to place for real, actionable conversations to help you grow your travel business. Now, if you listened before, you know this podcast has always been about bringing industry voices together, sharing ideas, stories, and strategies from fellow advisors and thought leaders. Now we're taking that same energy and focus and channeling it into sales education that helps you book more, sell smarter, and feel confident doing it. And if you like staying in the loop with everything happening at Travefy, because there's always something, all new tools and events to community highlights, make sure you subscribe to the Travefy newsletter. I will put that link in the show notes so you can get that. But now for our very first episode, coming back into the lounge, I am joined by Glenda Beagle from The Art of Selling Travel. And welcome to the lounge and also to our official kickoff of the Sales Workshop series. Glenda, thanks for joining us.
Hello. I'm so excited.
I know I have to say, when we were originally putting all this together, I was like, there is one person that I can think of for this episode. It is Glenda Beagle. So I am excited. We've had you on, I think another podcast actually in the past and webinars. And if you have heard Glenda speak, you will understand why she is joining us today for us. But if you haven't, you are in for a treat. And so I'm really excited. And what we wanted to do on this first episode to really kick off the Sales Workshop series strong is focusing on that mindset. You know, we really want to get in the right frame of mind for Sales Workshop. And so what I've done, I've curated some questions to ask Glenda today. And this is also what we've heard from advisors. So a lot of this is stuff that will probably really resonate with you all, I'm sure. So let's jump in because I know we have a lot of fun things to get into. Now, the first one that I had to do, this is the first question I have to ask you because it is something we hear a lot, is a lot of advisors hear the word sales and they immediately think that they are going to be pushy, that car salesman type thing. So how do you reframe selling so it actually feels authentic and fun instead of uncomfortable?
Actually, the first thing to reframe is for travel advisors to understand they are in sales, full stop. The amount of travel advisors I've worked with over the years that will say, no, I'm not in sales. I plan vacations. As a travel advisor, as a business owner, regardless of industry, you are in the sales and marketing game. You must embrace that full out. Now, how do you not feel like the used car salesman, the icky sort of factor, which we all dread? Authenticity. If you genuinely do not believe this is in the best interest of your client, don't sell it. If the supplier that they've asked for or the supplier that you're looking up, you're like, oh, I would never. Don't do it. That's when you're the icky car salesman, because the icky car salesman is not going to bring home that lemon of a car for their child, but they'll sell it to an unsuspecting young family. That's where the icky part comes in. The way you stay out of that is being authentic, true to what your client deserves, and really and truly embracing the fact that it's okay for people to spend money.
Yeah. That's a big one. And honestly, that might be the answer to my next question here. But what is one mindset shift that instantly just helps advisors feel more confident in those conversations with clients?
You're never going to know it all. Like straight up, you are never, ever going to know it all. Yesterday, I was doing coaching within our coaching program. And some of the advisors were talking about the fact that they were uncomfortable. There was an upcoming consumer event one of them was going to, and how uncomfortable they were. And another one was just talking about the fact that, like, what do we say with all of the flight cancellations and this, that, the other? There will always be something outside of your comfort zone. Always. And It's whether or not you embrace that or you hide from it. If you hide from it, good news, you already know where you're going to be because you're already there. So you're going to have what you have right in this moment. If you want more, if you want to grow, if you want to build, I'm so sorry, it's on the other side. It's on the other side of that comfort zone. It is getting in front of the people. It is having conversations. It is dealing with the flight cancellations. It's dealing with all of these other sorts of things. And so it's genuinely just embracing it.
Yep. And oh man, what a good kickoff to this whole series, because that is what it is. It's, you have to get over that uncomfort. So good. So good. Now, here's my next thing that I want to talk about, because we recently did a Facebook group post in our Travefy Facebook group community. And I wanted to know, what are the top things that people are finding challenges in with sales? And the thing that kept surfacing to the top was ghosting after they send a quote or a proposal. And what they would say, one of them said, leads ghost after I send a proposal or quote. So Glenda, why does this happen, and what can advisors do differently or keep clients engaged when this does happen?
So there's several layers to this. The very first one is that knowing whether or not it was an authentic lead, because there is a lot of travel advisors who will post something on their socials. Quite often, it's usually when they post a price, Puerto Vallarta $7.99, and everybody's like, "Oh my goodness!" Or they post something and somebody's like, "Oh, that looks amazing," and they said, "Would you like me to do a quote for you?" And they'll be like, "Sure." See, they didn't actually ask you to do that. You asked to give them a quote. And most people aren't going to say no to that because they're like, "Yeah, I'm curious. I want to know." But when you don't do a full consultation, you don't know where they're at. You don't know if they were genuinely serious or if they were just looking to kick tires and find out an approximate idea. Now, I also want to talk about the fact that tire kickers get a bad reputation, because I actually think that comes down to the travel advisor, because a lot of people are tire kickers because they are so not sure what the next step to take is. And so they're just kicking tires dreaming. We need somebody who can kind of wake them up from their dream and take them into reality. And there is a big part of the process that has to happen in between. So a lot of tire kickers aren't actually tire kickers. They're just don't know how to ask the right questions to be able to get the process started. Now, the other part of the question there was, how do I get them? Like, they ghost me after the proposal. When you do the proposal, whoever holds the proposal holds the power. In my sales program, we do not recommend sending a proposal. I know that there might be some people that are like, "Sorry, what?" And maybe you're the one on the other line right now listening and going, "That doesn't make any sense." But stick with me for a minute. When you send a proposal, or actually, if you were a client and you needed to get your house re-roofed, like get a new roof on your house, or get new siding or new windows or something else. Now, for those of you that are in construction on the side as well, this pick something else that you don't understand. I don't understand windows, roofing, and siding. But if somebody just sent me a price, I don't know what everything means. I don't know what all the different pieces of it are. So it's going to leave me doing one of a couple things. One, I'm going to look at price. I don't have any context. The price seems really high, so I'm not going to buy. Two, I'm going to look at price and I'm just going to pick the cheapest. And then I'm going to be really mad because it wasn't what I wanted. Or three, I just don't know what to do because there was no further instructions. So I'm waiting for the window guy to get back to me. And so often when I work with travel advisors and they'll say, "I got ghosted," I will say to them, "Did you get ghosted or did your client get ghosted?" Because when you just send something with no further instructions, and let's just be clear, "Let me know if you have any questions" is not instructions. But you want to actually put out that proposal, ideally video, in person, something of that nature, or at the very least on the phone. And if worst case you can't do that, use something like Loom or something like that, where you are going to record you going through your proposal on Travefy. You're going to go through it and you're going to walk them through. Now, here's what I love about Loom. Do the 5-minute free version. Okay. One, nobody wants to listen to you for more than 5 minutes, especially when you're explaining this. But two, it doesn't cost you anything. You know, that's one of the big objections, especially if you're new. I can't, and if you're getting ghosted a lot. So in which case we want to make sure that it's something affordable and easy to access. But what you want to do is be able to walk it through. And it could be something as simple as, oh my goodness, John and Nancy, I can't wait for you to go through this. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to walk you through why I chose everything. And from there, we're going to be able to proceed. So here's what we got. On day 1, you're going to do this. Day 2, you're going to do this. Okay, now you have an option here. We could have done this or we could have done this, but that's why we need to have a conversation. And so you're already embedding and priming in the fact you're going to have a conversation. So even when you say, my clients don't want to get on a call, send them a video walking you through it. And here's my favorite too with Loom. You can do with the camera off. So all they're hearing is your voice. You are the hype team. You are the one that's like, oh my goodness, you are so freaking lucky. I can't wait for you to see this. And you get to go through and you get to show them everything and you get to talk about why you chose it. Because I don't know about you, but I've purchased things and I'm like, I don't get it. That is what a lot of your clients that are just getting those proposals, the proposals look stunning. They're so well laid out, but they have so many more questions.
Oh, I love that. I love the idea too, just using the Loom. And you're right, you don't even have to put the video on, but it's just so cool. And also the thing that I love too is you can see when someone's watched it.
Yes.
So you also can follow that, which is good too. So you know when to be like, hey, I saw, have you checked that out?
My favorite is when it says it's been watched 27 times.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, we're hot. We're going in there. They've been sharing this with friends, which also makes it really easy to say, hey, you have any friends that want to go with you? But the other thing is that when they can hear your voice, that's great. And so Loom is that second option. The first is always for you to be able to have that conversation with them, get them on the phone, get them on a Zoom, something like that. Because you can hear when they take pauses. You can hear when they start and go, oh, never mind. And you're like, no, you were going to say something. No, it's okay. It's like, you know what? No, I think there might be something there. What was it? And that's usually where the objections are sitting. And if you don't get that opportunity to hear it, you're going to miss that. Now, a big pushback I get from advisors, and this is my favorite one, I don't have time for that. Again, if you're doing it where you've got them on the phone, on the Zoom, guess what? Odds are good. You're going to close it right then and there. I'm pretty sure you have time to make money. The second option is the Loom. Again, this is why I like the 5 minutes. I am going to ask, did it take you longer than 5 minutes to attract a new client, put together their proposal, do their consultation, all of that? Because if the answer is yes, then I would strongly encourage you to take those 5 minutes to add to your process to save from being ghosted. Because otherwise, when you look at how often you're being ghosted from not doing these things, 5 minutes can be the difference between a yes and a ghost. And I don't know about you, but that's 5 minutes extraordinarily well spent.
Absolutely. And I love the yes or a ghost, because a no is kind of a win too, because you got an answer and it's just maybe not now. But yeah.
Yep. You can, and a lot of no's are not a no.
True.
Because you can always ask, okay, great. What was it particular that we missed the mark on? Mm-hmm. And then they might say, oh, well, the timing's off. Okay, great. When's going to be a better time? When you get a no, you have a definitive. So in which case you're able to work with it and find out the ways around it. Very few no's end in an actual no, but but it's that definitive. So yeah, it's yes or ghost.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. Well, okay, I'm going to go into a little bit of a spicy topic here, because here's another thing that I think a lot of times advisors will immediately think they'll be like, oh, I know another way to make sure that you're not ghosted. Fees. And that depends when you introduce them.
Right.
But that's a big one. So this is, I mean, we could have a whole session on this one just on its own. But a really big challenge that advisors did share in our Facebook group community when we asked this question is just asking for fees. You know, of course, you get some that are like, no, I don't know how to approach it. And then some are like, you have to do this. And so just what is your take on charging a fee if it's important? And if they do that, what shifts an advisor needs to take to confidently own that value? Because it seems like that's usually the issue, is just feeling confident about asking for it if you do decide to go that route.
Absolutely. I will say the ones that don't have the confidence to ask for it don't believe they deserve it. Mm. And so nobody's ever going to pay you something you don't believe you're due. And so when that conversation of how do I charge a fee? How do I get started? How do I do this? How do I that? The hows have nothing to do with what's going to come. It's the why. It's the inside of you. You have to believe full out that you deserve that fee, that you've earned that fee, and that you are owed that fee. Because the moment you believe that to your core, you will be shocked how fast the how disappears. But most often when people are, I don't know how to do this, it's because they still have all of these doubts of what that is going to entail, about whether or not they're actually worthy of a fee. Fees invoke a lot of fear. And my favorite one is, I'm going to lose the booking. And 9 times out of 10, this is my favorite part, the person who's scared of losing the booking is scared of losing the booking because they've already been ghosted by everybody else. Again, goes back to that conversation of, are you quoting the ones that are actually doing an inquiry, that are going through a consultation process, or are they tire kickers? Are you going through and creating opportunities where they understand the value you bring? When you are so focused on not losing, you already lost. You got to focus on the win. If you were a sports team, there's a couple of, just thinking back, especially watching it through the lens of a parent when I watched my kids. So I come from a small town in central Alberta, and we took our boys basketball team to Hawaii for a tournament. We were playing against schools from Los Angeles, from New Zealand, from all over. And this Los Angeles team had over 300 or 500 kids try out for their boys basketball team. We were chatting with them. Our boys had 15 kids try out for the team. So 15 kids made the team. And they asked, how many boys are in your high school? And we said 17. Because every kid that tried out for our team made the team, because we just don't have that many. And so here we are up against this team from Los Angeles where they had hundreds of kids try out, and they whittled it down to 12. And so it becomes this thing of, let's just not lose too badly. And yet at the same time, there was this, no, because that was what some of the parents said. And then the others were like, no, these kids can freaking win. And you know what? In the end, they did not win, but they were within 12 points.
Ooh.
And this game went over 100 points per team. And so the thing is, though, is that the parents that were like, oh, let's just hope that they don't lose too badly, they weren't even paying attention to the game. They took their eye off the prize. And I heard a couple of the kids talk about it. And they were like, that was really defeating, because it's like they thought we couldn't do it. And so when you put yourself into a position of, well, I don't want to lose. You've shifted how you think about things. Because if you genuinely believe what you were offering to your client is the best for the client, you don't want to go into it thinking, I don't want to lose. Instead, you want to think about it, I want my team to win, because my team is my client. And so when you can put that into, I want them to win. So sometimes that does mean you're not the best choice. And that's okay. If you want to go into the thought process, it's about them. How do I make them win? Because here's the best part. As a coach, When your team wins, so do you. And so think about it from that perspective. You've got to get your team across the line. And when they do, you win as well. But if we go into it with the wrong thought, if we go into it with it all being about us, and in fact, we're going to stick with this analogy a little bit, because if the coach goes in and says, oh, I can't lose, like I'm not allowed to, you're just going to scream at your kids. You're going to scream at them and tell them like, you can't make me look bad. What kid wants to play on that coach's team? What kid actually wants to show up for that? Versus the one that's like, come on, guys, you got this. Like you can take it all the way. Then they get excited. They're like, somebody else believes in me. There's so much fear in the advisors that they forget that there's fear in the clients. There's so much uncertainty. The week that we're recording this, there is a government shutdown, and we're hearing of rotating flight air traffic control closures and other such. That is going to up the anxiety of uncertainty for passengers. And whereas, yes, it's a pain in the butt for the advisor and it's this, that, the other, you're also in the thick of it. All they have is sound bites from whatever news organization they happen to be listening to, or whatever it is that they see on TikTok or Facebook. They need you to be the hype team. They need you to be that calm, confident coach that's going to get them to the win.
Oh, I love that. I got goosebumps. I love it. It's so good. I've never really thought of it that way. And that is exactly what this episode is all about, is shifting the mindset, but being your own hyping your client, hyping you. Cause a lot of times, like, I'm not going to lie, I go into this thinking like, we got to hype up the advisors. Woo. But no, it's like the clients too.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I love that. And actually, so I have another one that this goes in really well to this, is what is a good way to introduce the fee in a conversation without that feeling of awkwardness or something, to keep that momentum going of, oh, I'm excited for you and I want this to work out. So how do you typically coach other advisors to introduce that into conversations so it feels good?
So here is the best way. One, do your consultation. Make sure they're a good fit first. Because if you're not going to be a good fit, because again, depending when they're planning to travel, you are about to enter a long-term relationship. So your consultation is that first date. And let's be honest, we all know of people that got 3 minutes into the first date and they're like, I'm out. Like this, there's no way. And yet for some reason in sales, we're like, I'll push through. Well, with travel, we could be talking about something 12, 18 months down the road. That's a very long-term relationship that you're about to enter. So do the consultation. Make sure that you're both a right fit. And as much as you want them to make sure you're a right fit, you need to make sure they're a right fit. And just because they have money is not always a right fit, just to be really abundantly clear on that. But how do you position it? This is my absolute favorite way. When a client would say to me, when I was selling travel, so do you charge fees? And I'd say, absolutely. Here's the best part. The fact that I charge fees allows me to work for you. Because if I didn't charge fees, then I would have to work only for the suppliers that were willing to pay me. And that could really screw you over. Because then I would be forced to only offer you things that are commissionable and only offer you things that benefit me. And I don't like having to work for the supplier. I always prefer to work for my clients. So that's why I charge fees. It frees me up to be able to offer you so much better experiences.
I love it. Well, and actually, I feel like you just answered this, but I was going to ask you, what is your favorite one-liner or script for explaining fees to a client?
Yep, that would do it.
Yeah.
And just be upfront about it. Understand why you charge a fee. If you charge a fee because you want to go on more FAMs, nobody wants to pay for that. Nobody wants to pay for your vacations. Because when you say, I need to charge fees so I can go on FAMs, you're not going on FAMs, you're going on vacations. Like, let's be really abundantly clear. But you do have business operational expenses. How do you pay for those? You have to pay for it through your revenue sources. You either work with the suppliers that pay you the most commission, or you work with the clients who are willing to pay you fees. And so when I charge fees, when I charged fees, it gave me the freedom because it allowed for more transparency. I have been in far too many travel advisor groups where people will say, you know, who has a great transfer from here to here? And people are like, oh, this one's amazing, but they don't pay commission. Oh, well, I can't do that then. Is there somebody else? No, these ones are the best. Yeah, but they don't pay commission. So now we've made it about you again. Fees allow the entire process to be about the client so that you're not choosing between what's best for them and who's going to pay you. Because we don't need that one that's going to meet them in the back alley and take them and make them question all of their life decisions just because you got a commission. We want to make sure that they get the best possible experience.
I like that. Yeah, that's awesome. And now some other questions that I have for you here is going to, I like to think it's almost going back to our bread and butter of when we've connected before on a webinar and talking about objections. So kind of going on the same topic as of objections and communications. Now, objections are part of every sales process. And what is the difference between an objection and a rejection, and how should advisors approach them with confidence?
So first and foremost, objections are inevitable. 100%. An objection is going to happen. It's going to happen frequently. And rarely is an objection what they actually say it is. Okay. So we'll come back to objections. Rejection is, so can I go ahead and book that for you? No, I wasn't planning on going on vacation. That's a rejection. Like, I have no interest in you giving me this quote because we're not going on vacation. Or they sometimes, those tire kickers or those ones that are like, oh, that looks amazing. And you're like, here, let me get you a price. And they're like, okay, great. You know, the one we talked about at the beginning. Yep. They had zero intention of going on a vacation, but they were like, I'm curious, what does something like that cost? Those are an entirely different concept. Those are rejections. An objection is, sometimes it is indecision. So the fact that they don't know how to make a right decision will get them to constantly spit out more objections. So again, anytime you are working with somebody, you get to the sales process or get to the closing and they start, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Go back to the beginning, do a new consultation. Because when you've narrowed them down, let's say you've narrowed them down to the Mayan Riviera because they want to go to the ruins, they want to do this, they want to do that. And now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're like, but what about Aruba or Dominican or Curacao? Like what about those? What else do they offer? You've already done all the proposals. At that point, do not start quoting the Dominican, Aruba, and Curacao. Say, okay, we need to go back and have another conversation because I need to make sure or need to double check if something's changed. Because sometimes they're going to start throwing you what's called a red herring to distract you because they don't know how to make a decision. So they're going to believe that they haven't asked enough questions, that they haven't gone through, that they don't have enough data, if you will. But the reality is they have all the data they need. They just don't know how to make a decision. And sometimes that's because you haven't asked them the right way to make the decision. The other thing with objections is objections a lot of times have fear. There's a lot of things around it. The very first time that I got a big objection that I was like, I got my big aha moment was when my uncle told me he couldn't afford something. And I may have laughed in his face. Now, for a little background, my dad and my uncle were twin brothers that farmed together. And my uncle was a bachelor and had my mom doing all of his books because the farms were so interlinked. And as any good farm kid, when parents have to do something, the kids get voluntold. So part of my job was to sort through receipts, was to do different things. I know what my uncle was worth. So for my uncle to say something to me about not being able to afford it, I was in person. It was somebody I knew. So, you know, there's a lot of bull sugar honey iced tea that came out. And so there's this moment of, that's not true. And that was really my big epiphany because you can't say that to a regular client, somebody that's not family. You're not going to be able to be like, I don't believe you. But it was that moment. So I looked at him and I said, what's the problem? Because I think at that time we were looking to send him to Hawaii or something like that. Anyways, the problem was my uncle was scared of crashing into the ocean. Now, I'd rather take my chances at the ocean versus land, but you do you. But the thing is, though, is that was a fear he had. So we sent him to a different destination so that he stayed on land. And there's things that people aren't necessarily going to say to you unless you've built the relationship in order to be able to have those conversations. There's a lot of fear and shame and embarrassment that comes from that fear. And so people don't necessarily want to say it, which is why the number one thing that's going to set you apart is your ability to create relationships and create a safe place for your clients. But if everything is 100% forms and 100% automated and 100% hands off, they don't want to know that there is a human on the other side of that. That's why they will go to an online system. But if you're wanting to work with clients, you're wanting clients to trust you, you're wanting clients to have that connection, you have to be willing to put in the time to earn it and build it. And that is the number one differentiator between a travel advisor and the online. It's that relationship. It's that ability to see behind the curtain. It's that ability when, again, as I said earlier, when they go and they stop themselves and they don't say it, it's your ability to say, there was something there. I will tell you, in all the years that I sold travel, that was always, always, always the cover for the objection that was going to sink the sale. And so if I didn't push for that, didn't nudge to get that objection out of them, we weren't going to go forward because it was usually a big question. But they were too embarrassed, too ashamed. They didn't know the answer. We have to understand we do this every single day. The travel advisors that are listening, you do this every single day. You are in it every single day. So it is a whole other language to you. You have clients that have reached out to you that have absolutely no idea what language you're speaking. And they're embarrassed that they don't know because they're growing adults and they're thinking, how do I not know what that means? How do I not know? How can I ask this question? I'm so I'm uncomfortable. So you have to listen for those moments where they catch themselves, because that's where your genuine relationship is going to get built out of.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a cool story to rechange how you think, because when you were even saying that, I never would have thought that was what was coming out of that. That's so crazy. And so my question for you though, is for everyone listening, is how do you start to teach yourself because I'm sure it takes time to start to learn it. And you mentioned try to listen for the pauses, the ahs. So what is it that someone can do to start listening for those objections and then be ready for them and keep asking questions? Is there special one-liner or question that you keep asking to try to get to it? Do you just give pauses? What typically would you suggest for people that need to start training themselves to be ready for those?
So the best piece of training is not a question. It is instead to remember, and this is an old sales saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in proportion. So you should always listen twice as much as you speak. And too often, particularly when we let our nerves kick in, we start rambling and we start talking and we just don't know how to stop. And yet that's where it is. When you ask for the sale, this was actually somebody who worked for me. She taught me this, and it was pure gold, especially then to watch it in action afterwards. She learned it from working at a furniture store. And when you ask for the sale, the first one who speaks loses. And so she had told me that. And actually, she had told me that before she worked for me. She told me that when she worked at the furniture store when I was buying furniture. But then I watched one of my advisors, and she had a client at her desk, and she said to them, okay, so do you want to go ahead and book that? Or did you need to go home and think about it? Well, which one are they going to go with? Obviously, they said, we're going to go home and think about it. See, when we don't know what to say, unfortunately, we start to fill them with the out. That pause at the end of the sale is not an objection. It's their brain going through, okay, is there any reason? 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 Oh, no, I guess we're good to go. But yet so often we can't necessarily handle that uncomfortable silence. So we want to fill it. And unfortunately, we fill it with the out because they're looking for the, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this? Because it's fight or flight. That is the situation our brain is in. It's in fight or flight mode because we've triggered those primal. That is part of what objections are, is they trigger those primal reactions out of the brain. And so as an advisor, so many advisors are terrified of what that objection might be. I remember one client came into my office and just the way the schedule was, they asked if they could come in after hours. And I was like, sure. So they were late, obviously. And then we were at the desk and going through the proposal and went through everything. And they said the inevitable words, okay, well, we just need to go home and think about it. And I thought, oh, hell no. It is now 7:30 at night. I was supposed to be done at 5:00. We're doing this. So I said to them, great. But before you go, what is it you need to go home and think about? And they said, what? I said, well, what are we missing? Nothing. I said, great. So then can't we just go ahead and apply payment? And they looked at each other and they're like, oh, yeah, I guess so. And so here's the thing. Objections are part of our natural responses. If you've ever walked into a store, had a store clerk say to you, hello, is there anything I can help you with? You're like, no, I'm good, thanks. Only to watch them walk away and go, oh crap, I needed their help. But we're already so pre-programmed that no, I'm good, thanks. Because we don't want to bother people. We're like, no, give us space. But then we're like, oh yeah, no, I needed help because I didn't know what I was doing, or I don't know where to find it, or this, that, the other. But it's that impulsive reaction. It's that instinctive, no, I'm good, thanks. Just the same as if you ask somebody, so how are you doing today? They're like, oh, I'm good. Because here's the deal. In full disclosure, I've had a crappy year with some things going on. And I started going out and people would say, how are you? I'm like, sucky. It's been a rough year. People don't know what to do with that. So it actually became a little bit of an interesting perspective to try.
Like a social experiment.
Social experiment. I'm like, I need something to entertain me. But at the same time too, though, people are already, because somebody would say, how are you? I'm like, I would say, really crappy. And they're like, oh, that's so good. And then they would catch themselves because they realized that they had an auto response. And so we need to understand that sometimes these objections just come from auto responses. They come from not even thinking about it. And yet as travel advisors, so many have such a fear of, oh no, I'm going to get an objection. Here's the deal. If you did not get an objection, you did something wrong. There is a book, getting to know, something like that. Anyways, but in this book, it has a story about a sales clerk, and he's working at a men's clothing store, and the manager, like the regional managers, come in to watch him. This guy comes into the store, the sales clerk's helping him, and everything the sales clerk offers him, the guy's like, yes, 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 yes. And he's like, this is amazing. Like, we're racking up thousands of dollars in sales. Anyways, he's so proud of himself because he knows he just nailed it. The guy leaves. The regional manager looks at him and he's like, so? Guy's like, didn't I do awesome? And he's like, no. And he said, what? And he's like, well, what did he say no to? Nothing. Wasn't it awesome? He said, then you didn't offer him enough. You've got to get to know. And when you go into it with that perspective of, we've got to offer to the point we get no's, then we know we found the top. That's one of the reasons when I work with travel advisors, they say, oh, I only have $299 Vegas. Well, have you ever offered them a $2,000 Hawaii or $10,000 Tahiti? No. Well, guess what? They only know you for $299 Vegas. So you've got to figure out, how do you get them to the no? So if all you get is yeses, you didn't reach high enough.
Ooh, what a reverse Uno card that just came out of you need to get to a no. You want to get to that.
Yeah.
Like,
But also when you embrace getting to the no, you no longer fear the no.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mic drop. There it is. I love that. Well, oh my gosh, I love this. This is so amazing. But for a last couple questions that I have for you here is some pep talk, some motivation, which we've already been getting like crazy here. But for the advisor listening right now who's just doubting themselves or feeling stuck, everyone's been there. What's your pep talk? What do you want them to remember the next time they sit down with a client? And maybe that we answered it, but
I'm going to go back to you're never going to know it all. And it's okay to not know it all. In fact, if I was a client, I don't necessarily want you to know it all because I don't necessarily trust you. Because if you have every single answer ready to go and ready right there, you start to come a little sleazy because it's just, there's something about it. And yet so many advisors, I was chatting with one yesterday who just said, like, should I script it? And so let's actually go there. She said, should I script out because I'm about to get started working with clients? Should I have everything scripted? And I said to her, I said, here's the problem with a script. One, if you're not scripted in the rest of your life, people will know that you're scripted. Anybody who listens to my podcast will know that there is no script. There's an outline. And from time to time, I will even follow the outline, but there's no script. But the reality is that when you are trying to script everything, it doesn't work when the person on the rebuttal of that script doesn't have a script to follow. Mm-hmm. And so if you're so tied into, I must have a script, and they ask you something from off script, will you be able to recover? And so that's where it's this moment of just exhale. Before you go into a consultation, if you are nervous, crank your favorite teenage music, crank it up and dance. Let that energy out of your body. If you are just feeling pent up as a whole, music or something that just releases, you've got to let the body release it out. Some people will ask me why I'm such a hand talker. It's because I'm throwing away the energy. I'm throwing away all the nerves and everything else as I talk with my hands. Or at least that's a story I'm going to tell.
I like it. It sounds good. It's cool.
But ultimately, you're not going to know it all. So when you encounter something that somebody asks you that you don't know, because I promise you, you're not selling enough if that doesn't happen. And here's what you're going to say. That's a really good question. And I am 99% sure I've got the information, but because I always want to make sure I'm giving the best information to my clients, would it be all right if I take that and get back to you in a couple of hours? I just want to make sure I'm getting the most recent, up-to-date answers for you. Nobody's going to say no. In fact, when I was chatting with this lady and I told her that, she misunderstood. And she's like, oh yeah, for sure. You can get back to me. And I'm like, no, that's what you say. And she's like, oh, well, that'll work. And so it becomes this thing that it frees you from that burden of having to know it all, because you're never going to. As I said earlier, we're in the midst of the rotating air traffic control. Between now and when this airs, here's hoping everything resolves itself. But we don't know at what point it's going to peak. We don't know when the next snowstorm is coming. We don't know when the next virus or whatever. This industry is beyond resilient. We get beaten down. We get a little battered and bruised, but we are beyond resilient. And so just exhale. Find the groups that are going to reinforce the positive. There is a lot of Facebook groups out there for travel advisors that can turn into royal rants. That's not the best place to spend your energy. Find one where you can connect with them, where you can ask questions, where people can lift you up. I have a Facebook group that I like to think is more on the positive side, mostly because I try to shut down anything that's not or delete it straight out. But where you put your energy, where you put your focus is going to magnify the energy. So if you're sitting in a space of negativity, of can't do this, all the schmoskos are taking all the clients, all the this is doing that, all the that, it's really easy to believe that that is the reality. But that's just such a small sliver. And yet somehow we all want to focus on the negative. I will also say, I would love for every travel advisor, everybody listening, Monday morning, I want you to write out what your goal for the week is. And Friday afternoon, and I get it. Some people are side hustle and they're doing this, that, the other. They got another job. You know what your version of a Monday morning and a Friday afternoon are. On the Friday afternoon, I want you to write what was your win of the week. And maybe it is the fact that you got up every day and you combed your hair. But it might also be that I overcame this objection and I closed a $300,000 file. It could be anything in between the two. But if we don't recognize the wins, the smallest win, I had a friend that said this to me once. And it was a couple of years ago when my podcast had just crossed the 5,000 total downloads. And she said, what are you going to do to win or to celebrate? And I said, what on earth are you talking about? I said, there are podcasts that do 5,000 downloads in their first hour of launching. I said, it took me almost 2 years to get there. And she said to me, and this has stuck with me ever since, if you can't celebrate this, how will you ever know it's big enough to celebrate? And so I genuinely challenge you, if you are listening to this, start writing your weekly win. And again, it could be that you combed your hair for the day. That could be all it is. But if you don't learn to celebrate those little ones, you're going to let all the negative, and we all know social media right now is heavy AF, and it will weigh you down. And so when you also have these wins, the problem is when we don't look at the wins, we look at how much further we have to go. And that line is forever moving. But when you look at your wins, it gives you a trail to look back at to go, holy crap, look how far I came. And when you can see how far you came, suddenly the other direction is not that far away anymore. It's if you were running a marathon, if you did not celebrate the mile markers, they put up a sign at every mile, or so they tell me, not that I've ever run a marathon, but they put up a mile marker. You know how far you've come. When you get to mile 16, you still have, what is it? I don't know, another 6-9 miles, something like that to go. It looks forever. But if you can recognize the fact you were already on mile 16, you've already crushed 16 miles up to this point, you don't have that much further to go. You are more than halfway there. And suddenly that distance starts to feel a whole lot shorter, a whole lot more attainable, because you're not on mile 2 with 20 some more miles to go. You're on mile 16. But if you don't pay attention, you don't know what mile you're on.
Yeah. If you are watching this, I'm just like, yes, love this energy. It is, it's so good. It's such a great reminder to just remember, because this happened. I know all of us do this. So we're just like, you think of the fails just outweigh it. It just always like, it's just, the negativity and stuff. And it's not, and you forget to realize those little wins. So I love that idea. That is a really, really cool idea. And to keep the positivity going, I was also going to ask you, and you mentioned you have a Facebook group, a podcast. Can you also share more where everyone listening can find you and learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned at the beginning, I host the Art of Selling Travel podcast. So you can come find me there. We do have a Facebook group. I'll send you the link for that. And otherwise, go to artofsellingtravel.com. We'll have all the links in there. You'll be able to find the Facebook group, the podcast, and any of the training programs that we have on the go.
I love that. That is amazing. And I will make sure to put those in the show notes as well, too. But before we wrap up, is there anything else, any other parting words? I mean, this has been incredible.
You know what? I absolutely love the opportunity. So thank you. But the one thing, and Travefy is an automation. Automation is a complement to the human experience. It is not a replacement for it. So it does not matter how amazing Travefy is. It will not get you across the line if you try to let it replace you. You want to use it as a tool in your toolbox that backs you up. That's how you're going to get those professional proposals. You're going to get all of that. But all of it, when we were talking about being ghosted and everything else, don't just send that proposal. Infuse you into the process. You are what they're buying. You are what they're paying fees for. You are who's going to overcome the objections. Yes, use tools like Travefy to look that next level professional, but don't let it replace you. You are the ultimate product. They can buy travel anywheres. What they are genuinely buying when they buy from a travel advisor is they are buying you. You are a significant part of the equation, so you need to remain a part of that equation.
Here. And that's what we say. Our whole motto is powering the success of travel professionals. And that's why we do, this, because it's a tool in the toolbox, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to that human touch, that human interaction, and that's the business we're in. So that's the cool thing. So I love that. It's really cool. And thank you so much, Glenda, again, for joining us today. Incredible. Again, for those, if this is the first time you've heard Glenda speak, now you are going to probably binge the podcast and go binge her podcast and go watch the other webinars we've had her on, because incredible. So thank you so much. And for this amazing kickoff episode of the Lounge by Travefy, our sales workshop series, we are just getting started, and we are so excited to be back here, bringing you that same energy, ideas, and insights that you've always loved, now focused on helping you grow your bookings and that sales confidence. But lastly, be sure to subscribe to the Lounge by Travefy wherever you listen so you don't miss the next episode. And if you enjoyed this one, share it with another advisor who you'd think would love it as well. So thanks again for joining us, and stay safe, and we will catch you all on the next flight.